Part of the reason why Africa cannot compete is because Africa is weak. We are weak because we are divided.
Greetings and welcome to The Insider about Africa, the future of the world. Did you know the ancient name of Africa was Alkebulan, which is the only word of indigenous origin? History has taught us that human ancestors have lived in Africa for more than 5 million years, hence earning its moniker, the Mother Continent. The Garden of Eden, as referred by many scholars, is surrounded by Mediterranean Sea in the north, Red Sea in the south, Indian Ocean to the west, and Atlantic Ocean to the east. It is also uniquely divided almost half by the equator, making the climatic and the physical conditions in the north repeat themselves in the south, proving how a bevy of beauty the continent is.
Where you go, London, USA, nowhere be like Africa, nowhere be like home.
Today, Africa is home to more countries than any other continent in the world, giving it a unmatched touch of cultural diversity. Flora and fauna, which is magnificent as its terrains, including large animals such as mountain gorillas, lions, rare north white rhino, and mpigo trees, just to mention a few. The Mother Continent also harbors other breathtaking views such as the Great Migration in Tanzania, Victoria Falls in Zambia and Zimbabwe, Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, flamingos in Kenya, and wonders of Nile in Egypt, among other thrilling sights. To many outsiders, the continent and our descendants are demeaningly reduced to nothing. Fortress of diseases, savagery, war, famine, and omnipresent image of flies on children's food and their faces with their stomachs bloated out. But did you know Africa contributes 90% of cobalt supply in the world, a half of world's gold supply, 2/3 of world's manganese, 35% contributor of world's uranium, and 75% of world's coltan. This, among other factors, makes the continent so attractive and at the same time a battlefield of global superpowers. Recently, the EU pledged to mobilize more than $54 billion in sustainable investment for Africa by 2020 because it wanted access to the African markets of 1.3 billion people. China too has been funding 1 in 5 infrastructure projects on the continent, investing trillions of dollars in exchange for free access to sell their goods, with at least 10,000 Chinese farms operating in Africa.
是肯尼亚蒙内铁路的内罗毕站，由中国企业承建的蒙内铁路被当地人称为世纪铁路。它东起肯尼亚第一大港蒙巴萨。内铁路的通车不仅改变了肯尼亚百姓的出行方式。
Moreover, we cannot forget the USA, which is the biggest investor in Africa, accounting for $54 billion in FDI tickets. In exchange, they get power and influence through establishing military bases all over Africa. Africa's colonial legacy, though influential, cannot explain all that is ours today. History, like geography, cannot be changed. Grieving for past mistakes is human and natural, but it can also provide excuse for despair. Some Africans argue that their continent has been crippled by what Steve Biko, a South African revolutionist, called a colonization of mind. white rulers thought their black subjects were inferior. Korea, for example, was annexed by Japan in 1910 and freed only when America dropped atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Single plane carrying a single bomb takes off from Tinian and drops that bomb over Hiroshima and kills 50 to 60 to 70,000 people. We are now into a completely new era.
Perhaps 100,000 people incinerated in seconds.
Before then, Japanese colonists tried to destroy the local culture and to cow the population into servitude.
The white-robed gentleman with the funny hat is the main attraction. This fellow is a typical example of the native Korean. He bows to the dominion of Japan, but he firmly declines to admit the superiority of Japan's intellectual and moral culture over his own.
The ordeal did not end with the liberation. Soon after the colonists left, Korea was plunged into civil war that cost 1 million lives and split the country into two. With such a traumatic history, Korea would have every excuse for failure. But the southerner, which my country Kenya contributed donation to, is now richer than the latter, and so are many ex-colonies from around the world, but not in Africa.
Armed soldiers in fatigues and masks appeared on television in Burkina Faso on Friday night to confirm the ouster of President Paul Henry Damiba, the second coup in a year. The military rebels also announced the closure of borders from midnight, as well as the suspension of the constitution and the dissolution of the government.
Let's call a spade a spade. Who should be blamed for all the messes if not ourselves? Atrocities happen in all corners of the continent with our hands folded, from electing corrupt characters as our preferred leaders to justice for hire in our courts. Until when will our stories be told by our neighbors in their own way? Until when will we stop the blame game and develop our own continent? Africa being the fastest growing continent in the world, as projections show, in the nearby future, 1 in 3 people on Earth will be African, giving the continent the potential to shape geopolitics and world economics in the decade to come. As the rest of the world continues opening its eyes to the potential of once ignored and antithesis of civilization, Mother Africa, we should all congratulate our leaders who have initiated vast steps in the growth and unity of the continent.
Africa has finally moved a step closer to creating the biggest economic bloc since the creation of the World Trade Organization.
Recently, leaders from across Al-Kabulan signed a trade deal that gradually abolishes cross-border trade traffic on 90% of goods and services from its 55 member states.
The road to this point has been long indeed. It can be measured in decades, and we still have a few more steps to take. But we are persisting, and a new chapter in the story of African unity is set to begin.
Once fully implemented, the Continent Free Trade Area Agreement has the potential to be world's biggest free trading bloc.
Free trade area for Africa is going to be like a flood, a trade flood that is going to lift all the boats. This cannot be done without all the countries of Africa participating, big and small. And this is an opportunity that is going to yield great benefits for small countries as well as big countries. And in a way, this is going to create a level playing field.
History being a reflection of who you are, a mirror that stares inwards to unveil the mysteries of one's soul. It is time to let Africa grow under its own terms and conditions, considering its importance on the world's map.
From east to west, waka waka my